right. Hello, hello, hello. Let me go ahead and make a new document. You guys can't see my screen just yet, but that's fine. I want it that way.
Or can we?
All right, switching over. Da 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 da. There you go. Almost sing like the Star Wars theme right there. Ba 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 da da. Dude, are you excited for Star Wars?
Copyright strike.
That's right. It's so funny. Even like just
Better watch
singing.
out, dude.
Yeah, even just singing, dude. That's crazy. That's clearly
No.
ludicrous. Can't believe they allow that stuff to happen. YouTube. Silly algorithms. Anyways. You know what? I've been doing this thing where I've been painting in color straight up. Straight up, getting back into those colors. So let's just do it. Yeah, are you gonna watch the movie?
I didn't know there was a movie coming.
What? You don't know
I just been
about?
watching. Well, listen, you know I don't watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, but this
Right.
is like one of those things where it's like it's not like you don't watch movies. It's like a phenomenon. Does that make sense? It's like,
Okay, all right.
what do you mean okay? Yeah, I'm absolutely right on this.
I mean,
you should know just by peripheral. Like even if you weren't trying to pay attention. Does that make sense? Like
I mean, no.
like even my son, when he was a little baby, he was like, Darth Vader. And I'm like, what? How do you know about Darth Vader?
Let me put myself in a defense here.
No, you're wrong.
I went in the past like 2 or 3 weeks. I've watched episode 4 and 5. Okay, and I
Those
like
are
them.
classics.
Yeah, I like those 2 movies. I need to watch 6. So I've watched
You watched the best
original
ones.
trilogy. Oh, those 2 are the best. Those are
Yeah.
actually pretty good, except where I have some critiques, and it might be just of the
What
times.
the hell? No, just
Dude,
kidding.
why is Princess Leia a princess? Doesn't make any sense. They
Yeah,
never
that's
explain why she's a princess, and she's bossy, and she doesn't achieve anything, and
well,
she
that's not.
kisses everybody. Why is she always kissing people, dude?
Yeah, that's not entirely true. But the princess part, I agree with. And but it's like that's like the movie though. Like that's like the universe. The universe is just kind of has a lot of bunker stuff. That's why I
Right,
always talk
but
about it.
I
Like
let it go. It's just weird.
yeah, I always talk about
Very
this about
ominous.
how like whenever people, I mean, you've been in plenty of my classes. Whenever people talk about like the practicality of things, and then I say, you know, I always use Star Wars as a great example of like laser swords, you know, and space wizards and giant talking aliens. Satan is actually in it too. He's in the first film. He's in the cantina scene when they're all just hanging out.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
It's just like
I was like,
straight
wow,
up
that guy's
Satan.
terrifying. Like, what the heck?
He's not an
They was
alien. It's just
they were
straight up
showing all the
Satan.
yeah they were showing all the like, aliens like hanging out in that pub, and then as they were panning, I was like, okay, cool, the different aliens, and then there's just like Satan looking menacing, like the most terrifying imagery. Of, what the,
Yeah.
like out of nowhere, just smiling creepily, looking around.
So I'm
Like, oh my
thinking,
god.
yeah, I'm thinking the reason why this exists is because, like, because when that movie was made, it didn't really have a budget to do a lot of stuff. Even like 20th Century Fox was just like, what is this freaking goofy movie idea, you know? And so they probably just like, they're like, what's lying around, man? Like, there's like this Satan cosplay or costume rather, and then they just turned it into
Oh, this could be an alien.
yeah,
Weird.
but I think that's what happened. But anyway, yeah,
I like parts of the Mandalorian when watching, keeping up with that, but I do
Mandalorian's
agree with
dope.
some of the. There's some critique about the direction the past couple episodes have been. It's kind of filler, like if you compare it to an anime, because it's not really going along with the overall plot of like what's supposed to be going on. Like I guess I don't want to get into spoiler territory, I guess. So
Then don't.
everyone knows Baby Yoda though.
Baby
And
Yoda's tight, man.
I have a theory that I could be totally wrong because I don't have I'm not very familiar with the lore of Star Wars,
Then don't
but I
say
think
anything.
No, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say my theory because it's not facts, so I can't get in trouble with this. My theory is that
You mean your
Baby Yoda,
hypothesis then?
my hypothesis, Baby Yoda is actually the Mandalorian, and it's not our main character.
All right, get out of here, dude.
They're gonna give him a tiny little Mandalorian helmet, and he's gonna be a baby, tiny little yodeling, whatever that their species is called,
Yodelings.
Mandalorian. He's gonna be a baby Boba Fett, or whatever. And he's gonna be the first of their species to adopt the Mandalorian.
Boba Fett this
I mean,
whole
how
time.
adorable!
This baby
How
Yoda.
adorable would that be? Because think about it, everyone wants to kill the little baby. They put a helmet on him. No one will know what he is. You know what I'm saying?
Like a little Yoda shaped helmet. No one's ever gonna know.
No one's that. Yeah, dude. No one will ever know.
Anyway, Star Wars. I'm gonna watch Star Wars. The one that's coming out. The one that's like supposed to end the latest trilogy. And I'm watching it out of principle, or not even out of principle, out of just like pure closure. It's like I didn't like the last one at all. And then the first one that they did, I was okay with, but I still felt like it was like how I felt when I watched the first episode of season 8 of Game of Thrones, where I was like, this is good, but, or like I felt good about it, but I also was like, there's too much stuff still, and there's so little time. Like there's too many things that are not going to be, like there's no way they're going to be able to tell, because they just closed the chapter on a lot of these things in the last season, and this first episode's like really long, and there's like nothing addressed, and I was just like, uh-oh, like this is cool, but if this is like the pace of the show, like then is this like a 17 episode series? Oh, it's not. It's like 5 episodes or 6 episodes. I'm like, and this is the first one. I was like, uh-oh. And that's how I felt about like the Force Awakens, because a lot of stuff was kind of like settled, so it didn't really make sense. Like with the first Star Wars movie, like they didn't know they were gonna make a second or third, right? Let alone like this whole monolithic franchise. So it makes sense that it was like an open and closed case. And with this one, it was like what did they not, like what leads up to the second film, right? I don't know if you watched it, but in the first one, like they destroyed the second Death Star, or the third Death Star. Kylo Ren got effed up. They got away, right? Like what? Okay, so they're gonna have to find Luke. Why? Like,
yeah, I agree with you on those things.
Like they did just fine without him. Like in fact, if any,
because I had no idea who he was.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen the originals.
Oh man, it was such a dropping of the ball. But like, I liked it though. It was like cool and very nostalgic. But I was just kind of like, but that doesn't seem like they know they're gonna make a trilogy. It's not like they don't know. These movies are going to be successful as much, even if nobody liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's how I felt. And so I'm like, closure. I'm like, okay, how are they gonna wrap this piece up? I am almost certain.
Check it out.
Yeah, I'm almost certain it's not going to be satisfying. It's going to look great because I think JJ and his team are on it again, and they're really good filmmakers. They make really cool looking films.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it's actually going to be any good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the last one, just like, man, and that was the equivalent of me seeing Danny go nuts in Game of Thrones, and that was how I felt when I watched
but then we
The Last Jedi
on that.
Well, that's why I felt like that. Yeah, I felt like I'm definitely not wrong, and so like I felt like no, there's no way now that this will ever make sense. You know, like,
Okay, about Star Wars.
well, like that's how I felt when I saw the Danny going nuts, and then that's how
It
I
could be explained.
felt.
That could be explained. That can make sense.
It can, but it doesn't. Like you can't just say it can make sense. Like you got to actually make it make sense. And that's how I made. That's how I felt with the second one of the Star Wars movies.
Hmm.
Because like this idea that like oh well, like yeah you could see all the signs and stuff like no like you can't like it's like confirmation bias. You can't like backwards like look at like oh look at this hidden foreshadowing. That's not how foreshadowing works, right? Like if you ever watch like Fight Club, have you ever seen Fight Club?
Yeah.
So at the end of Fight Club, there's a big reveal that he's actually Tyler Durden, right? But like it was always in play, and so when they go back and explain all this stuff, it makes perfect sense. Especially moments where it was kind of like weird, and you're like, "Why is he even doing it?" Like, and you're like, "Oh, dang it," because he was always him. You know, that's like a good like turning of events. And in Game of Thrones, they've done this actually already, right? Like they did like the two greatest scenes in television, right? Which was the Battle of the Bastards and
Yep.
the Red Wedding. So they have already kind of done this thing where they subverted your expectations in a really good way, right? Because all the stuff that I forget his yeah Rob did justified why the Red Wedding was going to happen, even though we didn't want it to happen. We're like, yeah, you know, like if you go against your duties and all this stuff and all these promises, why wouldn't people be upset? You know, like yeah, and in most films we would kind of like want, you know, well it's because of love, you know. It's like no, this is Game of Thrones, dude. Like you had an agreement and you backed it pedaled, and now we're murdering your whole family. And there's like all this other stuff that they did too, right? That would get like that would you would get away with in like a regular fantasy film or show, right?
Hmm.
But in Game of Thrones is like no, this is not that though, you know. And so and that whole season was about that. Like it was such an important point, you know. And so up until season 7, right? Danny had never shown any real signs that she was going to go that crazy. She always showed very consistent reactions, right? It wasn't erratic. It was very consistent. And then when she finally shows up to Winterfell in season 7, right? Everybody
I
treats
don't
her
know.
like
I totally
everybody.
disagree with that.
No, everybody treats her like dumpster fire for no real reason.
Mhm.
Like no real reason. Like they're just doing it because they need to give us a reason to make her go crazy, right? But like she was never like I never thought like when she did stuff that I was like, oh, but she's she's going a little crazy, or I question that judgment. Never, ever did I ever feel this way. You know, like it was like, oh yeah, I get it, man. You know, and they needed to do that sooner. And if they would have had 2 more seasons, right? For instance,
Mhm.
like if they would have made season 7 and 8 her actual downturn and revealing her insecurities more, that actually makes sense, you know, and actually showing how people are giving her the benefit of doubt, but then she's just kind of like she just doesn't understand the North, right? And actually showing that and showing how her father, why he may have gone mad, but from her perspective, you know what I mean? And even when she finally trips out, like she does it in a way that doesn't directly murder like masses amounts of people, because even her father, like it took him time to get that crazy, right? And he was still doing it because of like there was a genuine rebellion, right? It was like really actually happening. There was an actual mutiny against him. So it was just that his reaction to it was nuts, right? It wasn't like, all right, well, let's just kill everybody. It was just like
Exactly.
there was actually something that made him go a little bit more mad, right? And so for her, like, it would have made sense if she was just going to take out the Red Keep, and then Cersei's is also super nuts, and so she puts that green bomb stuff everywhere in the city. You know what I mean? And then so when Danny does that, and then Cersei gets away because she's smart, even though she might have lost the battle, right? Um, she would have got away, and then Danny would have incidentally like set the whole the whole city on fire, you know, because of her overreaction of just trying to take out Cersei, right? Like take out the Red Keep that stood for all the negative things in her life, right? And that would have been a really really powerful move because in terms of story, because she would have done something that was then actually like questionable. Like she did finally, her impulses got the best of her, right? She could just never control it. And this is the moment where she should have, right? Where everybody's now against her. She's like done all this stuff, and she's just like, you know what? I'm just going to cement my rule over this by taking out the Red Keep in general, right? And then at the end, when Jon Snow has to eventually confront her, right? It's not easy. Like from the viewers, like from the audience perspective, it's not easy. Meaning that, because after that, I was just like, yeah, she's got to die now. Like, she's just like genuinely evil now. She went from like one of the most loved characters to just super evil. Like literally in like a few episodes. Literally like in a few episodes. No, I'm right.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, go ahead. What's your opinion?
Okay, what I was gonna say is, so I binged it while I was sick. So I saw everything back to back to back to back into the eighth season. And watching it back to back, I noticed that constantly Danny had to be talked out of doing pretty irrational power moves that involved violence. So those are her core instincts. While she had a just cause, as the series went on, she kept on wanting to do more and more radical things, and that's why she surrounded herself with counselors who kept talking her out of it, and then she stopped trusting her counselors. And so there was a progression towards that madness, but you're
Absolutely.
right, they did take a jump, and it in the eighth season, I think they went too far with like the leap was a little too big,
That's all I'm
right?
getting at.
And
I'm not even saying that
right.
she
But
couldn't have been like mad. I actually think that's a great idea. You know, I think that's a
okay,
perfect idea.
yeah.
It's just execution wise, it was terrible.
But I think to say that there wasn't any sign of her heading that way is wrong because there is plenty. If you go back and you watch it,
No,
you
there's definitely no
you can
signs.
see it.
No, there's
No,
no
there's totally
no
signs.
because everybody else has the same problems. Everybody like you're making it seem like nobody else had like negative
She was
reaction.
the only one in that universe at the time who had the fucking dragons, okay? And she used those dragons as leverage for her power. And any opportunity she had later on, I think probably fifth and sixth season, it might be. I don't remember off the top of my head, but she wanted to use them to display her power. So like she executed uh I forget the guy's name, Turley. It was Snow's best friend, the chubby
Yeah,
guy,
his brother and his father.
his brother and his father, and that was totally unnecessary. um, and it showed how unforgiving she is with her power. She set the all the leaders of um, that one like native tribe, I forget what they're called, on fire because she wouldn't burn. So that was pretty like dark. Fucking just went in there and just like burned the place down and then walked out.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
there's a lot of
what happened to
instances of
her
just
though?
doing
Like why did
weird
she do
stuff.
that though?
Well, yeah, I mean they were gonna rape her and stuff, but
Okay,
but still, like,
my point is that like you're like she was angry when people try to f her over. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't make sense because then you're like making it seem like anybody that's ever angry or feels like there needs to be justice, there's eventually an opportunity for them to go mad. And the reality is like that can be true for any of the characters in the whole series, literally any of the characters, right? Except for probably Jon Snow, right? And Ned Stark. But like, you know what happened to Ned. And you know, like literally those two characters are probably the only real good people in the whole series. You know what I mean? And so
what was the guy in the wheelchair?
like
Was it
I promise you, Braun.
Braun? He
Or
shouldn't have been
Bran.
king.
Bran.
That was so trash.
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
like
And
him.
then Grey Worm was just like they're like, you killed my queen. And they're like, cool, dude. Just leave. Okay.
Yeah, that was so weird. I was like,
Don't
what?
speak. Okay, but let me just say this last thing, and then like 5 minute monologue. You know,
That was weird. I didn't like that.
it's that's what I'm saying. Like it clearly was rushed. You're not wrong. Like they could have like then like they use all those examples of that. She did have it in her, it wasn't entirely absent, but it's not. It just the way that it was told makes it seem like, yeah, it was just too aggressively changing. There's no effing way you're gonna convince me that those subtle things that were happening in previous seasons were clear clues, right? Like,
No, they weren't. They were not clear clues.
yeah,
But I wasn't as surprised when I watched the 8th season and saw her turn mad so abruptly. I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, she has like that killer instinct. I kind of
yeah.
saw it
It was
happening.
just too
It was like
killer,
just a
man.
little over. Yeah, exactly. It was a
Like
little
I would have even been okay with like the Red Keep and burn the
the
whole King's
politics,
Landing. Yeah,
right, and blame Dan. So she
and it
could
would have.
still.
Hello.
I'm here.
Okay, I'm gonna check to see the stream's still going.
I still
Let
see you
me
pinging right now.
know
Yeah, you're connected.
stream is connected. Why are people typing
It looks
F?
good. It's a Twitch thing. You type F in the chat when things go wrong.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's funny.
boomer.
Oh, they got me. No, it was clearly rushed. Even like the directors, like all the stuff was like the writers,
Right.
and
Yeah, well,
like all of it was like revealed. Like HBO was like, look
we
guys,
agree on that.
yeah, like we
Think
could,
about all the the errors with like having water bottles in the in the set. I mean,
yeah, and the coffee, yeah,
yeah, like clearly they were rushing the job. But last thing I was gonna say on that, then you should help me connect that to Star Wars, is that it would have made more sense to the characters if Cersei was being attacked at that keep, and then she gets away, and then at the last second she schemes to set off the bombs, the fire bombs or whatever, across the town,
uh-huh.
and then put it in the local news or whatever, spread the word that it was Dany that did that, and then she has trouble taking the power because they already despise her, thinking that she caused that destruction
Yeah,
when she did. So
yeah,
then that makes her
exactly.
turn
You
even more
do
evil because she's like, they hate me anyway.
you do that one thing that like where when you're a kid and you're telling the truth but nobody believes you, types that, like whatever that feeling is when you got when you were a child, right? Or when you get even right now, like when people do that to you, right? Like you have this infuriating feeling. People can relate to that. Like, like people could be like, oh yeah, I can see why. Like we all know too, because we're all watching from behind the scenes. We're not in the story. So then we can sympathize for her when she eventually turns, but we don't want her to, but she does. But at least we're like, oh man. And it could be abrupt at that moment, like whatever she may do, right? Like whatever it may be, where like she just takes Winterfell, right? And like just completely kills one of the main characters or something. Like if she killed Ari, right? Or someone like really valuable to the story that would really put John at odds, would put us at odds with her, right? But like at that point we're just like, okay, but we kind of get it, you know? And it sucks. And I don't like it. And I don't really like it could still be very jarring. Like like the Red Wedding. The Red Wedding was like one of the greatest examples of this, because the Red Wedding, like the whole season and everything up to that point built up to that moment. And it
Yeah.
was it hit hard. And like the real first clue that I knew that the show was truly on the path of destruction was like when they took out the White Walkers too so easily. I was just like, all right, there's something really bad's going on with this show. And then when I saw Danny go nuts, it's like, oh, there's no way. There's just not
I
enough
didn't like
time.
how the White Walkers had no exposition or anything. Like there was um
Subvert your
no reason.
expectations.
Well, there's no reason for it. And then like the cop out was that death doesn't need a reason; it just comes for you.
Cool, bro.
And so they were supposed to represent death or whatever. It's like, okay, I
Yeah,
mean, I
I've been
guess
watching. Yeah, I've been watching
that's
the
cool.
rewatching the Matrix movies, and I'm just like, the first one's so good, and all the other
Yeah,
ones,
I like that one.
and all the other ones, you can just tell they're just trying to like make it more trippy. And I'm like, I don't know, like I'm not in for this. I remember not being in for it when I was a kid when I watched it, and now I'm an adult. I'm like watching it again. I'm like, first one, solid A, dude. Like it's so good still. Um, and I usually like, you know, proud to think that I have like, I don't have nostalgic glasses on whenever I watch stuff. Like if something is truly not great, I can recognize it, even if I loved it as a kid. But I think The Matrix is one of those like you could watch it right now and be like, this is pretty good, right? Like, but when you watch like the sequels, like especially like the second one, I felt like the like the CGI was actually better in the first one. In it's weird to think that that's true. But
You're
anyway,
talking Matrix.
yeah, the Matrix.
I only
Yeah,
saw the
okay.
first.
And so with Star Wars, the problem with Star Wars, in the same vein that I was talking about, right? The reason why I was having this issue, okay, is like very similar, like where all the stuff that happens with Luke, right? All the stuff that happens with Rey, like why are the First Order all of a sudden back at it, like fully functioning? Like what happened? Like didn't they just get decimated? You know, and maybe they explained it in the scroll of text, but like they like destroyed like one of their main bases, you know? And I still don't understand how the First Order even came to be. You know, I still don't understand like how this is happening. And so like so I was like, whatever though, you know, Star Wars, tight. And then when they just started to kind of like just trail on these different adventures that I really didn't have any I didn't care. Like when they were on that casino planet, like almost nothing from that I remember. You know? And there's just like so much just stuff that they were introducing, so many new characters that they were introducing, you know, where it just became like it genuinely became like just confusing. Like I just didn't know what I was wanting out of this. And then when they're trying to make the twist of like, oh, she's like not important at all, like she's like nothing, you know?
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I feel like even if that's the way they want to go about it, I still feel like there's a better way to make that point than what they did. You know, like
What is it?
I don't like the idea that like just because I don't like the premise of what's happening or the plot doesn't mean that it can't be handled. Just like with the Game of Thrones, like Danny going mad. Like
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think that's a bad idea. I think that's a great idea, right?
Just wasn't executed well.
Execution, man. I'm all about that execution. I think any idea
That's totally fair.
can be told well, you know? Like even like like the reason why I have this too is because, you know, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is still one of my favorite examples of like you can have the craziest plot and premise and still get tears out of people's eyes, dude. Right? Like
Yeah.
the "We Are Groot" moment is still super classic, you know? And they genuinely have a dance battle at the end of the movie. It's goofy, right? Like if you were to just pitch that to me, like just raw, I'd be like, I don't know, man, you know. But like if you do good storytelling, and it just makes me think back of like old movies and how they would have these bizarro concepts, but it was okay because they would execute really well all the time, you know. And so I think that's the point I'm trying to make with the Star Wars. I think just execution wise, like especially with uh, uh, Ray's character, you know, which is really sucky because Ray could have been a really cool character, you know, but she's just too powerful. She's too OP, and she's running into the Superman
Without
problem.
any,
Sorry, say again.
I said without any like proper explanation of how she gained that much power out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's the Superman problem. It's the same thing that happened in the Matrix with Neo, right? Like when you have somebody so powerful, um, nobody can relate to this. Nobody and nobody likes that person too. If they know somebody that's just super lucky and has everything awesome, you know,
Mm.
like even when I was
Someone
watching
needed
interview,
backstory.
yeah, even when I
Sorry.
was watching interviews with Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, right? Because
Uh-huh.
he's in The Witcher, right? And I was just like, dude, this guy is so handsome. Like he's like so beautiful of a person, you know? And I was just like, dang, dude. Like he's genuinely like Superman. Like he's got like that same kind of problem, just like, and he's like really funny and charismatic. You know, I'm just like, dude, damn, this guy is like, if my wife left me for
He's
him,
got
I'd
it
be like,
all.
I get it, dude. You know, I would be like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think, like, I like to think I have a lot of value, but like, he could provide all that value at times too, you know? And so there are definitely people that I think exist that are at that level, you know, that are just, they are really, really like fortunate and they have a lot of like, all the cards lined up for them, you know what I mean? Um,
Um, can I
but,
add some?
but my point is that like, when we watch a movie, when we have characters like this, we just don't relate, you know? And although Henry Cavill looked like Superman, he generally looked like a perfect human being, even though Superman's not human. I think the reason why like Christopher Reeves was like one of the better Supermans was because Christopher Reeves, as handsome as he still was kind of quirky. He still had something about him that you felt like you have a friend that's like that, you know? And I think and if he just dresses up nice, he looks good. And when he doesn't, he looks just like a scrub. Like Henry Cavill, even if he dresses up like a scrub, I think get people thirsty for him, dude. Still, you know what I mean? And so like I felt like Ray is in that same wheelhouse, and she had that same problem where she's just super um, perfect, man, and it's just too perfect. Anyways, you're gonna say something?
Oh, you cut out. Um, I was gonna add to that that well, there's a theory that Ray has been made like through the Force to create life. So I mean, if that theory checks out, wouldn't that explain why she's so overpowered? They could have just manufactured like a really strong person from the jump. But then
Absolutely.
that seems like it's still not very good storytelling
No, you can like yeah. There's no
if that's how you explain it.
problems with having somebody be perfect. You just got to have a, a better way for them to deal with problems that us mortals, you know, could relate to, right?
Yeah.
Like for instance, with Superman, instead of trying to fighting him with brute force, you fight him through Lois Lane or something. You know, you find something that he can't win by just being devilishly handsome and super strong, shoot lasers out of his eyes, right? Like that's why Doomsday was super effective villain because Doomsday was essentially as strong as him, but he actually knew how to fight. Like there was like this concept that like Superman didn't actually know how to fight, you know, because he didn't need to, you know, he didn't need to learn how to fight, right? And when you actually have somebody as strong as him fight him, like that's pretty interesting, you know. But even with that principal concept, like you still try to find some other way. That's why with Batman, it worked really well with the Joker, right? Like it wasn't about brute strength, you know. Like that's the perfect scene that encapsulates this whole principled idea with Batman is when Joker is like in the movie Dark Knight when Joker is holding what's her face, I forget the character's name. Um, he's holding her, and then Batman's like, "Let her go," you know?
Oh, it's not that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's just like, "Let her go," and then Joker's like, "Oh, interesting choice of words," and he lets her go. Like he just does. He's like, "All right," you know? Like you thought he was gonna like exchange something, you know? Like, "I'll let her go if you do this thing," you know? He's like, "I don't really care. I don't have anything that I want from you. I just want to see you like react," you know? And it's really good. It's really good, like echoing of our hero's greatest weaknesses, you know. And like that's why like with Superman they had to like create kryptonite because it was like I don't know, like what can he? He's like super strong and nothing can hurt him. All right, like this is like alien rock that hurts him. Cool, dude, got it. You know, it's and there have been really good Superman stories where they found like really good writers in the comics have found really good solutions to like how to like make Superman have real problems, you know, like something that he cannot deal with. I forget what there was one where like Batman figured it out. Like Batman had like all these ways of defeating all the Justice League, and like one of the things was basically like how he would deal with something like not being able to save someone's life, like and knowing that he could have but he couldn't. And I forget exactly the circumstance, but that was how he was going to do it. Was like have Superman deal with that, and then when Superman tries to save this person's life, that person's like embedded in like kryptonite like vest. They're like basically a terrorist, you know, but they are like covered in like a kryptonite bomb, you know, and it's just like that will to always save people, even though it would kill him, you know. That was like,
Dark.
yeah, that was like Batman's solution to fighting Superman. I think that's what it was. I forget exactly, but there's like a lot.
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, there's like a lot of like different like there's a lot of really good ways, you know, and it's not like DC didn't have like a plethora of source material to extract from, right? And same thing with Star Wars too, man. Like it wasn't like the Disney didn't have access to like all of the amazing Star Wars literature that has been created over the many years, you know, that they could have pulled from like inspiration at least, right? But they're like, nah, she's super strong, super dope, and I'm like, all right, like it's just no one's gonna like my daughter doesn't like Rey. She likes Captain Marvel, right? I like Captain Marvel. You know what I mean? And Captain Marvel is like very equivalent. She has like she's pretty overpowered, but like it's how she became overpowered. Like there's like an actual leading up to her not being overpowered and why, you know, she becomes it. It makes some sense as much as some people don't like that movie still. Like at least it has like some bearing, and it's very. I think it's just it's very typical. It's like a very expected type of storyline, but you know, expected storylines still work. You know, like underdog stories always work, right? It's not like it didn't change anything. It didn't like make anything crazy. It was just a really cool movie, you know. And my daughter loves that character, and she feels like it's super cool. She loved that she was a pilot, you know, like she's like really into that. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, yeah, dude, this is tight, super tight. Anyway, I know we had like something else that we wanted to talk about, but we got like really into this Star Wars.
No, this is fine, dude. All we do here is just you paint, and we just chat, answer questions, things like that. So
yeah, I'm gonna do the questions pretty soon. But before we
do,
do,
don't have many. So if you guys have questions,
I know because everybody's probably like they're also like engaged in the chat. Yeah, they're all engaged. Was there any kind of like rebuttals or any interesting points that someone brought up in the chat? Were you reading it? I wasn't reading, obviously. I was painting.
I was keeping up with some things. People
Let's do some shout-outs.
Matrix 2 and 3 are not nearly as good movies as the first one, but they are great ideas. There are great ideas in them.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this too. Yeah.
The one way I'd like for Rey to go is to accept her power is if she goes evil and we get the new form of Darth Lord.
Yeah, look, I don't think that anything that they're going to do, like, I genuinely think it's going to be bad. It could be that, what you just said. But not because it's a bad idea. I think what that person suggested is fine. It's back to my original premise of, like, there was not enough time for it to be set up. For Star Wars, Darth Vader's a bad dude, right? Skywalker is this Jedi who has a father who was also a Jedi Master, right? Tight. We see the end of the Death Star, move on to the second film. Luke Skywalker needs to save his friends, even though he needs to also train, right? Because it's important that he trains so he could become a Jedi Master and truly defeat the Emperor, right? And face Darth Vader properly. But no, he's too focused on saving his friends. His heart is in the right place, but he should just generally get back to his studies, you know? But he goes anyways. He goes to face Darth Vader, unprepared, untrained, you know, and gets destroyed. Literally loses a hand in the midst of battle. And Darth Vader's like, "Look, dude, like we could be a team though. It'll be fine." And he's like, "I'll really teach you how to like be like a dope like Sith Lord. That's really where you need to be." And he's like, "Never." Yeah. He's like, "Never." And then he's like, "You'll kill my father." You know, like the very. Yeah, and he's and then it's like, "Luke, I am your father." Like that's like
no, it can't be. That can't be true.
Yeah, you know, super dramatic.
Just watch that.
Yeah, super dramatic. It's super good though. Like if you especially like back then, like when that movie came out, dude, I like people are like, what? You know, like that is amazing.
Oh, dude, I have another critique on Star Wars, actually. Since I just watched them, time I was watching, I was like, how the hell does he know what he's doing with the Force? This doesn't make any sense. He didn't really get trained in anything. All he did was some goofy handstands. And like and then Yoda showed him what's up by pulling his ship up out the swamp, and he never did it himself.
Well, I guess it's just implied that there was more than like a couple moments, but I
I
hear what you're
guess,
saying.
yeah. It was just weird because it was like I
Well,
don't
they
know.
didn't have like
It
a
seemed like he got
montage.
thrown into it. Like
Yeah.
there was no time in between. Like at least there was no semblance of time between when his aunt and uncle get murdered brutally, burned to death, and they show the corpses, and then he's just like, "All right, bet. All right, I'm go after. I'm gonna go after Darth Vader."
No, I think
And like
no, I think there was definitely some time implied. I don't think it's, and I think it's probably in the
it
scroll
seemed like it was a
text.
lot,
But
maybe.
even then, you're not wrong. Like it wasn't like years, so I get it. No, I'm
But at a
with you.
certain point, I mean, how much does that really matter?
Yeah, and I think like Star Wars doesn't do many montages, anyways. Like I can't think of one where there's like a training montage like Rocky.
I didn't necessarily
Da-da-da.
need a training montage. It just seemed like a lot happened in a
Well,
short amount of
that's what a
time.
training montage does, is to help us pass time, like imply that there's been training, actual genuine training. But like again, I think Star Wars they don't really care because it's just like space wizards. So anyway,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not opposed to what that person was suggesting. Though. I think that's pretty good. But that's what I'm getting at. Like, it's all about the execution, dude. Now, what have they done with Ray? Like, there's nothing. Like the second movie needed to do something for us to kind of like really want to know how this ends, right? Like we really want to know like what the final conflict is, how it's going to be resolved. But now it's like I mean, they only like it's I can predict it, right? Like, and I have a certainty that it's one of these may be right, and if they come up with something else, it just might not make sense, and that's why it's a problem, right? The only two outcomes that I can think of is that no, she is tight, you know, she is something, you know, and her dad is Luke or whatever, right, or something like this, like something. Oh, she is super dope, and this is why everyone's lying to her, dude. Like they don't know who she is. But if I already able to predict this, that means that the movie has failed in surprising me. Um, and like, and how that gets resolved, I don't really care, you know. Like even if I know some movies like how things are going to be resolved, I still like care because of how they've built up to it, right? With with what you call it. The other thing is that yeah, she is nobody. Okay, it's all right. Well, shit, it's not that interesting, you know. And so with like Luke, you at least knew now his father is Darth Vader, and now like the next episode of that saga, right, is now about like how at least that gets resolved, right? We know it's going to get resolved in one way, right? We know that Luke's going to win probably, right? We know that Luke's going to defeat Vader somehow, right? Because he's the good guy, and this is like the kind of movie. But we don't know exactly the details, and we want to. And even though that happens, that conflict is so interesting that we want to see it. We want to see it happen, even though we may know the result of it, right? Like we just know, like he's going to ultimately win, but like how? How does he win? And since you haven't seen it, I'll just leave it up to you to watch. But you'll. It's a good resolution, you know. I just don't see what this is going to do. You know, I mean, I just don't know what resolution I want. Like, what do I want? I don't know. I don't even know what I want.
Are there gonna be more movies after this one?
I don't know.
It
I don't
sounds like
know.
you wouldn't want them.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I went to
What,
Star Wars
what about
Land
the? Did you watch
for.
Mandalorian?
Yeah, I like it, man. I love that show.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's good.
I went to Disneyland. Went to Star Wars. Part of it, so good. I love Star Wars. I just wish these were better. Anywho, yeah, let's. I painted a new Star Wars alien. Yeah, right. Well, at least the first Star Wars, not the new ones. They definitely have defined their aesthetic now. Back then, they're still trying to figure it out. This probably could have still fit in there, even though it's monstrous. Oh, let's
I mean,
see
they put
if
Satan in.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Let's see if this object selection tool will know that my alien is monster is a different thingy. Yeah, we can take some questions. We'll take a few and then I'm going to roll out. Nope, did a terrible job.
There's only a few, so it's all good.
Yeah, if
So
you guys have questions, this is the time to ask. I know we went on like a rant, and I was going to talk about something else. Maybe we'll talk about it. Well, what's going on next week? Actually, I might be traveling. There might not be an opportunity for a stream next week. We'll sort it out. We'll let you guys know when it's going to happen. But anyway, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. Nah, I guess it's not that important if I forgot. Anyway, go ahead. Oh yeah, no, I remember now. It was because of the stream, like what we were going to talk about. And so I was originally going to talk about like plagiarism and how it's happened in the industry just recently, specifically the animation industry. I'm sure some of you guys may have seen this who follow any YouTubers who talk about video games. But yeah, we can talk about it next time. And I'll talk about my thoughts about that specific case. Obviously, I think plagiarism is a no-brainer. Like, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, just don't steal other people's work. It's pretty obvious. But I'm going to get into the details of, like, how it works in terms of our art. Because you may have gotten your artwork stolen or repurposed or refactored or whatever. And how you can deal with it and what my friends have done in the past. I think this is something that could be a really good topic, and I'll talk about it next stream. I think I could probably stream. I could stream earlier of next week probably, because I'll still be in New York, and so 11:30 Eastern time is 9, right? No, 8. Is that right? So it's like 8 Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, it's 3 hours.
8:30.
Yeah, so it'll be 11:30, but I might do it even earlier because my plane leaves. But I could probably just try to do a quick one. That's what I'm getting at. You know? Just so I don't miss a day. We'll just move the timing. Or sorry, not a day, miss a week. Anyway.
Are you going to be alone that morning, or are you?
Yeah, I'll probably be in like
James or somebody.
No, I'll probably be in my hotel room.
Okay. All right then, because I was gonna say you could have like a brief discussion with one of them.
Maybe I could do something on Sunday. It's not a bad idea.
You can always do that.
Yeah, and then like just do it that weekend, and then just have kind of like a podcast style. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
it's a good idea actually. It's a great idea actually.
Okay. All right. Let me ask these questions. So Josh Tiefer
Hey,
asks,
good old Josh.
any chance you can paint a head to toe full character? We asked for it today, but it's obviously.
Yeah, I could do it next stream. Well, maybe not this next one exactly, but you know what I mean. I can do it the following one.
Soon, TM.
Yeah. Not a problem, dude.
Okay, and then Lisa.
Yeah, I don't really think about anything. I just kind of just paint. I don't have any agenda. So if you guys have requests, just let me know, and then I'll try to backlog it for the futures.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Lisa Schmidt asked,
What's up, Lisa?
I have a art block. Sorry, I'm like scratching my eyes, so I can't read now. I have an art block, and this will not. I have an art block, and this will not end. What can I do? Why was that so hard to read?
I even knew kind of what she was going to ask too, just by your bad reading. Just from the. Anyway, sorry.
I'm allergic to art blocks.
So, yeah, art blocks are usually just evidence of you just don't have. What's going on here? Why does that keep popping up? Art blocks are just a product of you just ran out of stuff in your mind, And so if you understand this principle, like idea that you just don't know anything new to talk about, or you don't have anything that's like new on your mind or something new to explore, the solution to that is to learn new things. So instead of trying to like, it's like, okay, let me put it to you in a different context, right? It's like if you were to take a math test, right? Let's say calculus, and you have never studied calculus, you have never looked into it, and then you're just trying to solve these answers to these calculus questions just from like your mind's eye, like just from your uh, just from your why is it so hard for me to get this out? Oh, it's because I'm trying to do some file layer management in this file. When you're just trying to guess it, obviously you're not going to do it, and you wouldn't even do it that way, right? Like that's the next point of this thing is that you wouldn't even do it that way. You wouldn't even bother exploring or reaching in this direction, right? You just immediately go practice or study or research. But for art, people do make this mistake all the time. They'll start to like try something, and they're trying to do something different, and then when they try, nothing comes from it, or they're trying to come up with new ideas, and nothing comes out of it, and they're just like, I have an art block. It's less of an art block. It's more like you just don't know what else to do. Just like in the calculus example, you don't know how to solve these equations. And so just like the same solution for that is to go and research and learn more things, the same is true for getting out of an art block. Right? Like if you learn and experience new things in your life, you go try new stuff, you go experience new cultures, new people, you read about things you've never heard of before, like you engage in new content constantly, right? Then you're going to have new ideas just floating in your head subconsciously. If you're always looking at the same YouTubers who always say the same things, if you always look at the same Pinterest boards, if you always look at the same artists on ArtStation or on Pinterest or on Instagram, or many of these art places where you can look at great artists or great artistry, and you just keep engaging in the same world of information, then you're gonna always just be able to only make stuff like that. And even that, if you don't put it into practice, you won't even be able to recreate any of that kind of stuff. So it's really just a matter of just engaging in new content all the time. That's how you get out of art blocks. Recently, I've been trying to do more like graphic style. Excuse me. Graphic style stuff, and yeah, it's fun. It's challenging, but fun at the same time. But I'm learning new things. I'm experiencing new stuff. Whenever I'm on my YouTube, I always try to look at new stuff. But there's definitely things that I like to look at a lot more than other things. Like I really like science and space and all that kind of stuff. That stuff fascinates me. But I guess that's also a really powerful tool as a creative, because I'm always being introduced to really cool concepts and ideas that I would have even thought about, but scientists did. And so this is the kind of stuff that I would say you need to do. Otherwise, yeah, you're just going to always feel blocked, right? But I'm almost certain that you don't study new things. Like you don't engage and involve yourself in new activities and new worldviews and imagery often. You may do it every once in a while, but that's not enough, clearly. You got to do a lot. You got to really just, like, if you want new ideas, you need new experiences. So if you keep doing the same pattern of behavior, of course you're not going to come up with anything new. Like I'm going to go to New York. I've never been. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to meet new people, hear new stories, see new art. It's going to be good.
All right. Francisco asks,
I'm going to take this
AJ,
last question because I actually have to get out of here. You talk too much about the Star Wars stuff.
all right. AJ, I wonder if you know the work of Makoto Kobayashi and the work of early Simon Bisley.
No and no. Cool. We can take another question.
Okay.
Yeah, take those names out. I'll check it out later, though. Michael will send me a
I'll
link.
DM you them after the stream.
Thank you.
Anton asks, AJ, I was messaging you on Instagram about Sadiguri. So what do you think about him?
Yeah, dope. Everybody's asking about art. Yeah, I like him. There's very few artists that I don't like. I'm not the kind of artist that hates art. I like love art. And what I mean by that is like I don't like there's like some artists who will be very critical about everything. They're like just natural contrarians. I'm pretty optimistic. My criticisms are very far and few in between. Like I complained about Star Wars and I complained about Game of Thrones, but it was mostly in my opinion, constructive criticism. But in the same regard, I love Game of Thrones. I actually think Game of Thrones is one of the greatest television shows that ever aired. That's why it was so much more disappointing. You know, I don't think it's the greatest. I think Breaking Bad holds that title. I like the Mandalorian. I don't see really any problems with this. I like all the Star Wars movies, even the new ones. I just in the scope of all the other ones, I don't really like them comparatively. I like Michael Bay movies. I like the Fast and Furious franchise. I like love type stories. I like video games of all sorts. You know, I play like mobile games. Like there's a lot of stuff, man. I like a lot more of the stuff that I am critical of, and I always get really cautious whenever I hear somebody that's always critical about all things. That I don't really know if I trust their opinion as much as somebody that is mostly positive, and then has criticisms once in a while, or even just a good balance of both. I was watching a comedian named Chris D'Elia, I think his last name is. I forget how to say his last name. He's a funny guy though, but he's clearly like an angry person. And he was talking about Keanu Reeves, right? And he's like, dude, this guy is like freaking amazing. And so like that like if this guy is talking good about Keanu, right? Like Keanu must just genuinely be an awesome person. Like even like the most angriest people who complain about everything, because this is what this guy does. He like complains about a lot of stuff. He's like, Keanu Reeves is perfect. I'm like, damn, dude. Like who does not like Keanu Reeves? You know? And so it's like that kind of stuff I pay attention to, right? If like someone's incredibly negative, but then they say a couple positive things, I am interested in why those things are so positive, and then vice versa. If someone's so super positive all the time and they say one thing that's negative, then I'm curious why they thought that's a negative thing. But I generally try to find things that you should, I try to find things that are good about stuff, like I try to see if there's a solution to problems too. Like I don't just say things are bad. I try to come up with a solution to the problem that I had a criticism for. So, for instance, Star Wars, I gave one for Game of Thrones, right? I didn't give one for Star Wars. I can give you the solution, at least my opinion of the solution. Whether it's good or not, who knows? But ultimately, like what I'm getting at is, I do love lots of things. There's very few things that I don't like. There's many things that I like. I'm a very I have these like existential crisis type of conversations behind closed doors, but I don't live my life like this. I usually live my life very positive. With that being said, is there any other question? And then I'll give you guys my solution. I'll pitch you my solution to Star Wars. And I guess I'll keep on painting this guy. I was considering him done. I didn't want to paint anymore, but I'll take one question and then solution to Star Wars.
Inked D asked, what's the best approach to learn to render from form realistically by doing a random form from imagination or painting basic forms with a reference?
Both. Yeah, the best answer to that question is not about how, but more about how much are you doing, right? Like not about like what you're doing, but like how much you're doing. Now we've talked about this in a different stream about like I don't really believe there's like bad practice, even though there generally is for sure. But the rationale behind why I say you should not think about this is because when people think that they're doing something wrong, they may actually stop because they feel like, oh, what a waste of time. And then that mentality genuinely leads them to stop doing stuff, you know? It demotivates them. But if you just say like if you put it on a more of abstract level, it's like, hey, put more time in. Like just do stuff. Like don't stop, right? If you focus on this principle strategy versus like how you may be doing something, like, that's not the right way. You're a failure. I think that's a much more effective way of getting better. So instead of thinking about like how do I get better at painting forms, say to yourself like how am I going to put 2 or more hours in my day on practicing forms, regardless of whether you're doing it right or not. Like just how am I going to get that hour of extra time to paint? Instead of thinking of, am I doing it right? Like, can I get more time put into this is a better way of thinking versus how am I doing it right? Because when you start putting more time into it, you will start to see results one way or another, whether they're working for you or they're not. And if they're not, then you still have that hour that you're focused on putting time in. So you might try something else. And then something else might stick for you. Because if I just tell you to paint from imagination, you might not be at that level yet, right? Like that might be way too challenging for you. So that's bad advice. But let's say that I ask you to just paint like from like reference images. What if you're too advanced for that? Like what if you already know how to do that really well, but you just can't translate it from imagination? You can see how that either cases, depending on the context, would be bad advice for you, the individual. So I think it's what's generally universally true, unless I see your work and I can critique your work directly, which I do for many people. I usually give general advice is like, just put more time in, focus on the time aspect of it. Like focus on how many hours you're getting in versus how you're doing it. And because then you're not focused on quality either, right? If you're focused on timing, then you're not focused on whether it's good or not. You're focused on if you just got the time in. And ultimately that will make you better because the more time you put into something, the better you get at it. Anywho, I'm going to give you guys cliff notes of the Star Wars solution that I thought. And I think it was in there. I think the seeds were planted and they just didn't execute. So I originally had this thought of like, what a really cool concept of like, you have Kylo Ren, you have Rey, and you have Finn, okay? You have this trifecta. And each one of these people represents a personality trait, that we can amplify through how they behave in the whole movie, right? Like this is how you tell stories, right? You find a characteristic in somebody and you reveal to the audience why that's a flaw, and then you demonstrate to them how they overcome that flaw, right? So, for instance, with Rey, she's independent, aggressively so, right? She doesn't take help from anybody. She's kind of like a loner, and that is her character flaw. And this story has been told many times in many different ways, so it's not like this is an original idea. But you basically have like the isolational story of like how she's isolated, but she generally does want companionship, and she generally does need help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. You can still be strong and independent in an individual and still ask for help, right? So that's kind of like the moral that we'll be setting up for her. And then with Finn, he's like the opposite, right? He's always asking for help. He's always like he's a coward. Like he can't he doesn't know how to like operate under his own terms, He made so many bad decisions. He even became a stormtrooper. You know what I mean? Like he's just genuinely not in control of his life, and he is basically a giant representation of like a man-child, right? And so you go through those notions, okay? And those are very obvious cues of like what's wrong with that, right? You need to have some self-independence and the ability to be accountable to others, right? So then what is Kylo Ren going to fit into all this then? Well, he's got to be the catalyst to both of these characters. And so he needs to just be pretty much perfect. He is born from the Skywalker bloodline, right? He's trained by a Jedi Master from birth, right? Unlike Luke's father, Anakin, and unlike Luke himself, right? This kid has been trained from the very start, and he's naturally gifted. So he not only is he, like starts with like a silver spoon in his mouth, right? He's like naturally gifted too. Okay, so he's like his father and his father or his mother and his uncle and his father grandfather before him like had nothing on this guy. Okay, he's like genuinely potentially going to be the greatest Jedi that has ever lived. Okay, and so then he basically becomes overwhelmed with greed, or maybe not. Maybe there was a good moment in the second one where they were like, actually, I'm going to change this because I think this is better. Where maybe he wasn't, but Luke was still Luke, right? He was never really trained at a very young age, and he's still kind of this insecure little kid farm boy, right? And so there maybe there's like this fear that Kylo's becoming too powerful, and maybe he does try to like kill Kylo because he thinks that there is a problem there, and then that spirals him out of control to become the villain that we know, right? But we don't know that at this point in the story. We just know that he just did some really terrible things, okay? We don't sympathize with this character just yet, maybe in the second film. But in the first film, we definitely don't sympathize with him. He's definitely just like straight baddie. Just like Darth Vader, right? And he's perfect in every way. And he's not even a Sith master yet. He's just like an apprentice, He's still like a kid. And he's like already freaking better than his grandfather, his uncle, and his his grandfather and his uncle, And so now, and they've already planted this seed because guess what happened? Like he had like caught that laser. Remember that moment when he catches a laser? Like he shows like super powerful Jedi skills, from the start. I remember that moment too. I was like, dude, dope, And so then you just tell the whole story. I need to wrap this up. I just realized it's getting late. You just tell this whole story in this kind of box, and they kind of had all those pieces there. They were all there. And then what you do is eventually you just build it up, and all of these things that the two protagonists, their weaknesses, keep getting them in trouble. They keep losing. They keep nothing works out. They just barely get out with the skin of their teeth every time, right? However that looks like, And so, for instance, like the moment where Rey is like, "Oh, you're a monster." Like, no, Kylo's a beautiful, handsome man too. Like when he takes off his mask, he's like the guy from like the 50 Shades of Grey or something, right? Like he's like just a beautiful dude. He's not even ugly. He's just like a fanboy of his grandfather, right? That's why he wears a helmet. He's not doing it because he needs to breathe or whatever. He's just genuinely a fan. And he's like beautiful. He's a beautiful, handsome man. Even like maybe knocks Rey off her feet a little bit. Like, dude, this guy's devilishly handsome, And I mean, he and why shouldn't he be, right? He's like the son of Leia and Han Solo, who are beautiful people. So anyway, just regardless, that's not the point. The point is like nothing works against this guy. Like he's perfect, and he's like naturally talented. And so you just build up this tension around like Rey is really fumbling with the Force. Finn just keeps effing everything up. Nothing's working out. He's just a klutz. And like again, like they barely get through the skin of their teeth through a lot of these scenes. And so when they finally get to that final battle, the battle could finally have some real impact. Okay, because at the very end, what ends up happening in the original version of the story, they just like beat the crap out of him essentially, right? Like Kylo really. Like at first is like kind of winning, but then he just like loses straight out, against someone who has like no training. It shouldn't have gone that way. It should have went the other way, where she almost gets murdered by Kylo Ren. He like effortlessly almost kills her, and she's there alone because she wants to fight this battle alone. She feels like she's became good friends with Finn, and it's like, you're a coward. Like accept that and just leave me alone. Right? This is very reminiscent of when Han Solo bails out on Luke, right? And so she shouldn't have done that. She should have asked for help, but she was so overly zealous for whatever reason. And then Finn comes back, obviously, because we need him to come back. Because he isn't a coward, and it's a moment, and he's like, you know what, I'm here to help. And so he completes his arc by coming back to help her, and he uses Chewbacca's crossbow. He shoots it at Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren blocks it with like catching it with his freaking mind powers, because he's already demonstrated he could do this. And we've already demonstrated that the crossbow is a really powerful weapon. So even Kylo Ren's able to like stop this powerful laser, right? And then Kylo Ren just looks at Finn like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, don't you know, like, I'm badass, like, I'm perfect." You know? There's nothing none of you guys could do. And then you have Finn say something smart or something like, "Yeah, I'm sure you can catch one, but can you catch many?" And then he just like unloads the clip essentially on Kylo Ren, right? And now Kylo Ren's like, okay, he actually has to put some energy into this, so he's like deflecting a lot of these things, and he's like stopping some and then throwing them back at him. And then Finn's just like, oh shoot, you know, he's like dodging it. So it's like real stakes. Like, this isn't easy. And then while that's happening, you know, the defeated Rey is like realizing, you know what? No, we gotta like work together. And she puts her hand out, and you just hear the music, you know. And then she reaches for the lightsaber. Right when this whole time while he's been distracted, and she just, and then she goes into battle. And then now you have like Kylo Ren, Rey, and Finn having this like trifecta battle that symbolizes everything that I was just talking about. You know, about like how talent versus hard work and independence, you know, and bravery, all that stuff. And they still should almost lose. You know what I mean? So then by the end of the movie, like, there's a real incentive to find Luke, because Kylo Ren is incredibly powerful and he's almost completing his training, right? And it took like freaking Chewie's crossbow, like the destruction of like this whole Starfleet, a semi-force using, you know, amateur, and like the whole rebellion to barely escape, you know, their clutches. Right, and then Kylo's just like, all right, let's get on the chase, because Kylo's not at all affected by this, and he's like, we're gonna kill them all, and they're gonna lead us right to Luke, and I'm gonna end the only person that can stop me, only person that could potentially stop me, because he couldn't kill Luke in the past, right? But that's not what happened, right? Like, the opposite happened. It was like, no, we won, defeated, and she like scarred him too, you know. It was like the opposite. There was like, it just doesn't seem like there's a real baddie. Where with the original Star Wars and any other film that has like this kind of, they're always like that existential baddie that's just like real threatening. But then at least there would have been some sort of incentive to go see Luke if Kylo was still just like this incredible badass. And so that's kind of one of my solutions. Is more of an overarching solution. It's not like beat by beat, story moment by story moment. But the moral of the story is like, you know, hard work and effort beats out on talent. You know, like, that's kind of the big moral, because you would have Kylo be the talent, right? At least symbolizes it metaphorically. But anyway, all right, I really gotta go now. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching this weird monster alien dude be painted in front of you guys. And I appreciate you all, and cheers. Thanks, Mike, for hanging out. Wait, did you leave, Mike?
No, I'm here. Just let you do your thing.
Yeah, I have like a solution to the Matrix sequels too, but that one is a little bit more top secret, because my friend told me some of the original stories that were told, and I'm like, dude, that's some OG stuff, dude, and it's really good, and it overcomes the Superman syndrome in a really elegant way within the constructs of the Matrix storyline. And so I'm like, oh man, that would have been perfect. And I watched it again. I'm watching them again, and I'm like, oh, I can see how they were originally going to go with this, but then like they just decided not to. And I'm like, oh, this trilogy would have been classic. You know? It could have still had all the cool ideas, but then also have this one. And I think the reason why the ideas that I'm thinking about got overturned is because of, they wanted to like have this like weird cerebral understanding of what the Matrix is. Right? But ultimately, that's not what made the original Matrix good, right? The original Matrix was more than just it's cool to think about this world and that it's over and stuff like that. You know, it was really an underdog story. It was about believing in yourself, right? And there was no real moral after that with the second and the third one. It was just became really spiritual, and I'm just like, oh man. Where this other premise, there was definitely a moral, and it was a moral conundrum, the best kind of morals, right? And I'll give you an example of a moral conundrum. Do you join World War II to fight the Nazis, and even though you would have a small part, you would be part of a big historical event, right? You can say that you fought in one of the most historical wars ever, right? And had an impact on it that was relatively minute, like nobody would ever know, especially if you died and and it was really kind of like dramatic and like kind of cinematic, like you see in movies. It's just you went in first day, you got shot and killed, right? But like just you being there may have saved the life of another soldier who did go through and fought and really pushed through, right? Or maybe the 10 other soldiers behind him. Who knows, right? But it's a very minute impact, but it is part of something important. And if nobody did, then the war could have went a whole different way, right? There's definitely an argument there. Do you do that, or do you not go to the war and stay home to take care of your dying mom or your dying grandmother and take care of her on her last days? Because you know it's going to be her last few years, and she needs somebody to be there with her, and you're going to be there with her. And now you will have a very small historical influence in the world. Nobody will know at all what you're talking about. It's just a very intimate story. But you would have a huge impact on this one person's life. So that's a moral conundrum, right? Like it's like, well, which is better, right? Some people will say fighting for glory, right? For the greater good. Some people will say staying home and hanging out with those who they care about, right? Like it's neither one is necessarily the best answer. It's just what would you necessarily do, right? And there's one that's even closer to the movie's premise that they originally had, which was like the whole idea of like if you're in underneath like a floorboard and there's like Nazis walking over you and you're with a bunch of other people, like Jewish people, and Nazis are looking for you and your baby's about to cry, and the only way to stop your baby from crying is basically smothering it. Like, would you do it? That's another like moral conundrum, like, or moral like mind effing, especially in my case, because I know objectively speaking, smothering your child is the best option, right? Because all the other people's lives will be saved because of this, right? Even though your own child would die. But I would never do it. I just couldn't, right? I'd rather all of us die than living knowing that I killed my child. Even if I knew it was for the great, like, you know what I mean? Like, even though I would know it's for like the ultimate good. It's just having children, knowing that this, like, I can't imagine myself doing this ever, right? And it's one of those situations that is just hard. I mean, I guess it would be even harder if my other children were there too. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a hard one. But that's what the Matrix could have had. Like, it had like these types of questions that would be floating in your brain, rather than like, oh, there's a million Agent Smiths. You know what I mean? And I thought that was really cool. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but just let your mind wander, guys. All right. I came from BuzzFeed video and I saw you live. Nice. All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace out. Thanks for joining the stream. Appreciate y'all. Thanks, Mike, for hanging out.
Peace out.
And ending.